Hello, wonderful person. This is Anton, and
Evening all, how are we? And no, Anton Petrov is not on this stream, sorry to disappoint. Awesome as he is. Although that would be cool, actually, to get Anton on the stream talking about some of our science subjects. Does he still say what the math? No, he's changed his channel name now. Anton Petrov is a science communicator. He does a video every day about pretty much every science subject you can think of. Yeah, it's definitely going to take a while, Space Dad, although we should have more people on the team at the beginning of the year. And our scope is much, much smaller than Star Citizen, so nowhere near as much to do. Well, I'm sure you'll all be pleased to know that other than about 4 hours of agony yesterday, I haven't been in pain at all today, so looks like the kidney stone is hopefully, touch wood, passed. So yeah, hopefully that's all behind me now and I can get back to working without distraction. Yeah, psh, whole galaxy, easy. Let's take a look at what I've been up to. Oh yeah, I saw that in passing, CSI. I hope it's nothing serious. Yeah, well, funnily enough, Unreal Engine are actually adding a form of server meshing built in. I doubt we'll be using it, to be honest. Drink-wise, I'm drinking out of Commander Burr this evening. I like this actually. Like, every time you take a drink, you end up giving Commander Burr a little kiss on the head. So it's like, Mwah. I can try to, Don, but I think it's already on max. Yeah, it's already maximum. I can't turn it up any higher. I also can't get it any closer because it's kind of, the microphone is like stuck up against the monitor support, so it can't come any further this way towards me. Gone? I'm still seeing green bars. Hang on, where's me Logitech stuff? The input gain on the Logitech software is at 100%. I cannot go louder, I'm afraid. Right, let's switch to Mini-Me a minute. So I've been working on the distribution of factions throughout the galactic space, and specifically the density of star systems. So here we've got an example of one of the factions in the game, and as you can see, those green dots there are systems controlled by that faction. So what I've been working on is how the spacing is between their systems, and where they're positioned within the sector space versus any other factions that might be there. This is actually a multi-faction system. In fact, if I turn that back on, I've put it down to a single faction for testing purposes. We stick that back in there. So here we can see we've got multiple factions within the same sector, 3 by the looks of things. These two are pretty much overlapping each other, and you've got that one over there on its own. So you can see that the density of systems is perhaps a little bit too high over on this side, whereas you can see they're much less dense over here. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to balance the radius of the system based on how many systems there actually are under the control of that faction. So what I was just doing on here is just forcing it to a single faction, and then we can hard set some of the values to see what we're looking at. So minimum tech level would be 20 plus the 5, so the minimum is 25. So let's just see what that looks like a sec. Yeah, so that spacing doesn't look too bad. Essentially, you've got the faction homeworld in the middle, and then you have all the faction systems in a radius around that. Now, if I give that faction more systems, more systems under their control, then that radius should grow accordingly. So if we give them what would be 45? No. So the max tech level is 50 plus your 15, so that's 65 systems. So we should have a larger area whilst maintaining the relative distance between systems. Yeah, that looks pretty much the same. So you can see, because we've given that faction more controlled systems, their overall area has grown accordingly. So if we plug everything back in, so there's going to be a fair old bit of complexity to this, because once we've generated the civ data for a given faction, and then we've generated where those worlds are, we need to have a think about obviously, are those worlds that they control going to all be inhabited worlds, they can't all be Earth-likes because there's way too many Earth-likes in one region of space. So we need to mix that up a bit and maybe go 25% Earth-likes, and then the other 75% could just be faction outposts on various worlds of interest. So we need to have a look about how we feed that into the system. Obviously, as far as the system gen code is concerned, all it knows is that belongs to a certain faction. It doesn't know how to shape that system accordingly. The only one it actually knows about is the homeworld. So we can give it a homeworld flag. So when we add the sector location details here in this struct, at the moment we're adding the civ data, but we can stick a homeworld flag on that, so we can make sure that it definitely adds this as a Earth-like world within the habitable zone, assuming that's relevant for that particular type of race. But when it comes to the faction worlds here, as we loop through and generate all of these faction worlds, at this point we're going to have to start informing the system as to what type of star system we're generating, because we don't want them to all be Earth-likes, because that just doesn't really fit well with the scientific realism. So there's a lot more work that needs doing to this to add all that extra functionality. And also when it comes to the faction details, we need to go a lot deeper in terms of not just the political structure, but the name of any factions that relate to that, the name of a leader, the name of a religious figure, and all those different things which make up the story of that faction. All of that still needs to be fleshed out and delved deeper and deeper into. So that's one of the other things on my to-do list. I won't get all of that done for this demo update, but I'll be doing a number of updates following the demo update, because there's going to be a lot of things we won't get done in time. So I'll just keep adding them week by week until it's all done. Yeah, so that one should be right for that one. So single faction, if I put this back up to the maximum, so when we're generating a single faction, they can have at the moment a maximum of 100 controlled worlds. So we'll have a look at what that looks like. I believe this sector had a single faction in it. So there's a single faction with what should be 100 worlds. Doesn't quite look like 100. Let's just double check. Oh yeah, it is 100. Doesn't look like 100, but it definitely is. I might just push the distance out a little bit between those. The idea with the single faction is that essentially that single faction controls the entirety of this sector of space. So the more systems we give them, the better, and the wider radius we give them, the better. But we'll have to see how that works CPU load wise when we're actually running that sector, because obviously the more systems you have, the more ships are going to be flying around, and the more ships that are flying around, the more things we've got to track. And most of that is just going to be changing vectors. But every time that sector ticks, obviously we need to update all of that. So we'll see. We'll see what the loading is on that. There may be an upper limit as to how many systems a faction can control before the thing falls on its face. Yes, Firstus. So I will I'll go into some of that in a second, but basically the idea is that you're not going to know anything about any of these factions. You'll scan a planet from a distance, or you'll scan a star system from a distance. You'll see that one of the planets has a text signature, so that's kind of a breadcrumb trail to lead you to that system to find out more. If you make contact with that species and that contact is successful, then you can do things like exchanging star maps. And once you've done that, they will reveal to you the extent of their territory. So you'll have all of their systems already pre-scanned on the sensors because they've shared that data with you, and maybe some more systems of interest as well. So we want there to be some practical benefit of meeting an alien species and making that successful first contact. You need to get something back from that as a reward. So I think star maps are a really good first step with that one. Yeah, Aaron, I did try doing that and it looked awful. It's just a series of blobs all over the thing. Maybe a single sphere emanating from the homeworld might work a little bit better, but we'll see what we can do. I could potentially use volumetric spheres rather than just transparent spheres. That might work a little bit better. They won't all be inhabited, Daniel Jackson. The faction homeworld will be usually an Earth-like world, depending on the physiology of the species. And there will be a number of other Earth-like worlds as part of their faction. The other systems they control, however, will just be outposts. We don't want like all 100 worlds to be all Earth-like worlds, because that's just not realistic. So we'll have like outposts, star bases, just things which relate to that faction all around, spread all around their space. Yeah, most of everything that we're doing is iterative, Francie. So, like in this sense, so we've started generating the systems of control for the various factions within the game. Again, all this is procedural right now. So everything about these factions is going to be procedurally generated, and at the moment they just exist as data points. So you'll have a text-based description of who they are, what type of government they have, how old their species is, etc, etc, etc. And all of that's going to be revealed via short-range scans. As we move forward with development, we'll start implementing actual physical presences for these species. So they'll have ships flying around, they'll have space stations orbiting stuff, and eventually you'll be able to interact with them in person with a physicalized form. But obviously, that's quite far down the line. So we're just building it iteratively, one single piece at a time, and we just keep adding extra layers of detail as we go. The pre-warp species are going to be handled completely differently. I touched on this in the last stream, but we have this chicken and egg problem. So we generate the entire sector of space all at once. So that basically generates what type of star systems they are and where they are within that 100 light year cube. Now, when it comes to generating all the planetary data, like ocean chemicals, atmospheric pressures, all those sorts of things, we do that on a per system basis. And that data is not generated until you interact with that system. So you have to either physically go there or physically select it from the sensors UI. So we can't generate like 3,000 or 4,000 star systems worth of data all at once. So we have to do these individually. Now, because the Drake equation stuff, the life calculations, because those happen at generation time on a per system basis, we don't know whether or not that species exists until that star system is interacted with in some way. Which means, from an external perspective, if you're across the other side of the sector, if that were to be an FTL capable species, you would expect them to have ships and things flying around. But the game wouldn't know that they existed as an FTL capable species until you visited their system. So we've got this, cart before the horse problem. So what we're doing instead is we're drawing a hard line between pre-warp and post-warp civilizations, whereby if they don't yet have FTL capability, then we don't need to generate them beyond you actually visiting their system. We can do text signatures, that's easy enough because you've interacted with the system in the first place to see that there's a text signature there. And we can generate the full suite of, or we can go through the full science-based approach of looking at the atmospheric pressure, looking at the atmospheric chemicals, and building a species that lives on that world that's in line with the environment that species evolved in. And all of that can take place on a per system basis when you visit that system. When it comes to post-warp civilizations, so civilizations that do have FTL capability, we are simply spawning them separately. So we are creating those already built within the sector. So what the system does is it creates an underlying background state for the sector. So are there any FTL civilizations? If not, then the whole thing is all the Drake equation stuff. If there are, then is it just a scattering of independent worlds? Is it a series of factions, or is it just a single faction controlling the whole sector? And then what we do is we generate all the data for those FTL species, including where they are, where their ships will be, and all of the stuff that's relevant from a distance. And then we can add all of that into the game in a live session as soon as that sector is generated. So essentially from 150 light years away, those ships will start showing up on the sensors. So you can interact with those FTL civilizations without ever having actually loaded the system that they come from, if that makes sense. It's a very long explanation, but that's basically the problem we've got and how we're fixing it. Are we able to form a union or something like that with the aliens? So that sort of thing will be handled mostly with the single player campaign, and obviously all of the single player campaign stuff is also going to be in the sandbox, minus the story. So there will be handcrafted civilizations which have various political states and political relationships with one another, and that's all part of the big story surrounding the game. When it comes to the alien of the week, as I'm calling them, the procedural aliens, that's all per sector. So there might be a number of factions that already exist within some kind of federation, but that's isolated to that sector. Now, it could be the case that through your negotiations with them, they accept you as part of that federation within that sector, but that story and that relationship will never go beyond that sector of space, because each 100 cubic light years is generated in isolation, and one sector of space has no awareness of the ones around it. So you can't have a civilization, at least not procedurally, that extends beyond more than one sector. The handcrafted alien races can have as many sectors as we give them because it's all handcrafted. But yeah, the procedural ones are very much... The idea behind them is that you will meet an alien species, you will have some form of interaction with them, and then you'll continue on your way, on your journey, exploring and meeting other factions. They're not really the kind of thing that you'll come back to repeatedly, because you're off exploring the galaxy. The handcrafted ones, they are the kind of the hero species of the game, and those ones you will come back and interact with frequently throughout your journey, especially sort of the big bad, which will have a presence around a lot of the galaxy. Yes, Delta, there will be, we want the Sol system to be really, really fleshed out, and over time, as we build out the expansions, we'll always be building out Sol as well. The third expansion in particular is going to take place pretty much predominantly around Sol, so that's going to need a lot of different stations, and because the idea of the third expansion is you're running your own space shipping company, obviously we need a lot of infrastructure for that shipping company to to deliver cargo to. So we need a lot of infrastructure in the Sol system. Yes, Space Dad. Once the alien species actually have a physical presence within the game, and it's going to be similar to No Man's Sky in that regard, whereby we'll have kit-bashed aliens, I suppose you could call them. We'll have lots of different styling and theming asset pools, and those asset pools will be pulled together to create various different procedural alien bodies. So you'll have something like an insectoid asset pool, and then we'll have hundreds and hundreds of different variations of different insectoid type bodies and limbs, and then we'll combine those to create unique insectoid like humanoid like figures, and the same true for sort of mammalian and avian and any other physiology. We'll have asset pools dedicated to those styles of creature, and then when we kit bash them together, they should have some visual consistency. So you're not going to have something like a lizard body and a giraffe neck. We don't want to go in any crazy directions. But once those alien races are physicalized, then once you've met them, then you'll be able to invite them onto your crew. One of the questions we've had in the past is, can you play as one of the alien races? And obviously there's going to be loads and loads of them, especially with the backers as well. So we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of backer races, and obviously understandably those backers want to play at those races sometimes. So I think the way we'll do that is, once you've met them and you've established peaceful first contact with them, at that point you can choose to play as them. But of course this is quite far down the line yet. Yep, could do, Aaron. There's probably going to be a slightly cleaner solution to that, but I'll definitely look into it. Yeah, we don't want spore creatures, because there's definitely a balancing act to be achieved here. We don't want everything to look samey, but at the same time we don't want it to be so random that it looks stupid. So we want to create physiology asset pools and then mix between only those asset pools. So like the insectoid asset pool, any of those insectoid pieces should combine together to create a decent looking insectoid creature. We don't want an insectoid with big fluffy legs or something like that, although that might look cool, you never know. But yeah, we'll try and keep it visually consistent within the scope of what that physiology actually is. Obviously we need to have a skeleton that works for that particular frame, and then we need those assets to fit that skeleton. So what we'll have is a database of different skeletons within that physiology pool, So there'll be various different insectoid skeletons, various different avian skeletons, mammalian skeletons, lizard skeletons, and then we'll have asset pools to fit those skeletons. So the end result of all of that is you should have a very varied visual appearance, but also in a controlled way, because they are adhering to the physiology that we're setting for them. Yes, Francie, that's basically the way we're going with it. So the sandbox is going to be free, and the sandbox is going to contain the whole galaxy and all of the procedural content within that galaxy. The story mode is going to be released as DLCs, and those DLCs will have a price associated with them. So that's going to be the full story campaign and new ships and whatever else we put in that DLC. Any galactic stuff that we're adding as part of that DLC will be added to the sandbox, and we're going to make it so that if the DLC has a new ship, in fact it will have a new ship definitely, only the person who, if you're making a multiplayer game, only the person who owns the DLC needs to own it for everyone to play on it. That didn't make any sense. Hang on, let me try rewording that. Hang on. Why is that such a difficult sentence to say? So when making a multiplayer game, that only the server host needs to own the DLC in order to start a game with a DLC ship. People who don't own the DLC can still join that game and play on that ship. So you only need to own the DLC to start a multiplayer game with that ship. Does that make sense? Hey Charlie, thank you. Just got an email from Kickstarter asking me to answer a few questions. Yes, Charlie, that came from Claire. She did a survey on Kickstarter. Predominantly, that's just so we know, have we missed anyone in terms of giving keys out? I mean, we've sent the keys out like 6 different ways, and yet some people still haven't received them for some odd reason. And to check people's names for the credits and things. Yes, Francie. So again, the story-driven campaigns are intended to be a single-player narrative experience. So unlike the sandbox, where you basically have free roam to do whatever you want, they're going to be a lot more driven in terms of where the story's taking you. So your position aboard the ship and how you exist as part of that crew is going to be a lot more closely contained within the story. So for example, you'll have to go to sleep at the end of your shift, and then the act of going to sleep is what progresses the story to the next day. Little things like that. It's a very different play experience that's focused on you as the hero of the story, within your role aboard the vessel. Whereas in the sandbox, everyone's equal and everyone just does whatever they want. We're not having escape pods, NL, we're having life raft. So like a real world naval vessel, they don't have like space coffins that just contain a single person. They actually have lifeboats. So you'll have, I guess, with like modern shipping, cargo ships and things, you'll have like this bright orange box thing that everyone sits in, which can hold up to like 20-30 people sometimes. And we're going down that road. I haven't built them yet, so I can't show them. But on the underside of the ship, you'll be able to go down into these big life rafts, and they all detach and float off. containing a number of crew members rather than just one person. And they'll have their own oxygen supplies, their own food stocks, and basically everything you need to stay alive for a few weeks. They'll probably also be landable as well. So the idea is that the life raft or the lifeboat, if it's released above a planet, will be able to land on that planet and then serve as a shelter on that planetary surface, along with supplies for as long as needed to be rescued. You do indeed, Paul. In fact, we had someone ask us, like, what if they don't want the first DLC, but they want DLCs 2 and 3? We'll probably do it by way of tokens on our website. So once the website system's finished, we'll have DLC tokens that we can assign to you on an account. So then you can choose to redeem those DLC tokens on whatever DLCs you want. So in the case of the Captain tier, you'll get 2 DLC tokens, and then you can just redeem them, in whatever DLCs tickle your fancy. So if you don't want the combat focused DLC, you can skip that and get the next one for free instead. Yeah, potentially, Dave. It depends on how we give access to the DLC content. Because the DLC content is going to be in the client anyway, we could do that as an account-driven thing in addition to Steam keys. So if we have like a Fleet Yard account system, you can simply log into your Fleet Yard account and get access to those DLCs without having to go through Steam to get them. Any future romance options with the NPC crew? Yeah, potentially. I mean, I guess Dwarf Fortress is kind of the inspiration behind the NPC crew. Obviously, it's not going to be that deep, but we want them to have their own life aboard the ship. We want them to have a proper physical presence on the vessel. So they're not just going to appear and disappear as you walk around. We're not going to spawn them in and spawn them out. When you're not near an NPC, they will still exist where they were, and they'll still be pathing around and doing their job, albeit invisible for performance reasons. But they'll still physically be there on the ship. So, at the end of their shift, they will go to bed and they will sleep in their quarters. So we want that NPC crew to really feel like a proper crew. So, all of those like inter-crew relationships are definitely something we'll build out over time. Yeah, Dwarf Fortress is hugely inspirational, to be honest. What they've managed to achieve with it is crazy. Multi-generational storytelling in a tiny amount of code. It's crazy. But yeah, definitely something along those lines. Like I said before, I want to see the NPCs get up from their duty shift, go to the bathroom, and then, come back and rejoin their station. I want them to be real aboard the ship. Yes, Charlie. If you look in the video description, there's a link to our Ko-fi page. You can upgrade there. Although I would say that, obviously, if you've already got a tier, if you want to just pay the difference to the next tier, we're quite happy for people to do that, but you need to contact Claire on Discord to sort that out, or contact Claire on Ko-fi to sort that out, because obviously we need to track the difference there, and there's no system in place to allow for that, so it's something we'd have to do manually. Yeah, exactly, Joan. And one of the things that, or one of the reasons the carpets can get dirty on the ship is we want the NPCs to react to the environment around them. So if the carpets are dirty, the walls are tatty, everything's broken, the lights don't work, we want the NPCs happiness and comfort levels to drop accordingly. So their performance aboard the ship will be less effective because they're working in a really crappy environment. Whereas, if you've got nice clean carpets and everything's clean and fixed and lovely, they'll be much happier in their environment and do a much better job. So we definitely want that level of interaction with them. Thank you, Claire. I'm always putting all these things on Claire. Every time someone wants to do something, I'm just like, yeah, just speak to Claire, she'll sort it out. Slopey shoulders. I'm too busy, that's the real reason. Alright, what was I doing before we got chatting? Oh yeah, these. I was going to push out the generation range just a little bit further for 100 faction worlds. Yeah, that's a bit more like it. And also, what I've done with these factions is I've tied the extent of the faction's space to their tech level, plus or minus some randomness. But generally speaking, the higher their tech level, the more of their sector they have taken over. It's a decent enough analogy for the age of that species and how long they've been out there exploring for. Oh, there's a bug there, Francie. So, if... Actually, let me just demonstrate. If the player character is hidden, as it is when you're in no head bob mode, as you're going around, it's like a million footprints per second because there's nothing there to do the foot IK. If I switch to third person, you can see that the feet are now, or the footsteps rather, are now in time with the feet movements. You can see it's also back to normal now. But yeah, that's the bug. It's because the character is invisible on the no head bob mode, which is a bit of a pain. But we are ripping out that character system at some point and replacing it with a much more functional one. That's one of the jobs that our future employees will be doing. Thank you, James. Appreciate it. So the last thing I wanted to do was independent worlds. Right, so it's going to spread these in a circle. So what I want to do is, I've had an issue on the last stream where faction worlds were generating too far away from their home world because the generation was a cube. So essentially what we're doing is the spread of the potential coordinates are clamped on the X, Y, and Z, positive or negative to the spread. So we've got a spread of 50, that's positive 50 to minus 50, but that's on each axis, which means you can get something generated in the corner. And off the top of my head, I know that 15 light years, so if you have a 15 light year radius on a cube, then the corner is 25 light years because you're on a diagonal. So to combat that, I just did a quick measurement to the distance, and if it was beyond the clamp, it just tries again and picks another vector, which is fine. That works. It's fairly performant and gives us a proper circle. But we don't want a circle for the single worlds, so I just need to add a boolean to that. The question is, we want to break this bit of logic here, so it's a duplicate location or it's out of range. We try again. I think, to be honest, we need to, rather than doing an or there, we need another branch, because we need another bit of logic there. So we do that. Obviously, branches are fairly costly, so we don't want to do it too much, but in this instance, we do need the logic for it. So if it's out of range, I suppose we want an and circular. I like tidy lines, sue me. Right, so if it's out of range and we're circularizing, then try again. Otherwise, do not bother. That should do us, and then we just need to make sure we populate that boolean. So multiple factions, yes, we want to circularize. And then for a single faction, yes, we want to circularize. And then for an independent world, we do not want to circularize. Push that value up a little bit. And just for testing purposes, actually, let's just force it to do independent worlds a minute. Yeah, if you turn on head bobbing, Fredashay, then you do actually have a full body there. It's difficult because obviously with the full body, the camera is attached to the head. So yes, you've got the full body there, but because the camera is attached to the head, obviously you get the movement of the body as you're walking around, and some people suffer from motion sickness, and that is really bad for them. In most games, what will happen is the neck becomes loose, if you can picture that. So the head is attached to the camera, and the camera is static, and the body's moving. So you've got like the neck bending and stretching as the body moves underneath the camera. The system we have isn't set up to work with that, so that's something we'd need to work on in the future. Ultimately, eventually, we will have both head bob and non-head bob modes that both have full embodiment. But because of the limitations of the system we're using right now, to go non-head bob, we need to hide the player character. It means generating a circle, Aaron. I don't think it's a word I made up, although I wouldn't rule that out. So this is independent worlds, and it's not generated very many. Let's force it to make more. So if we do a maximum of 50, again, this is that balance of, we want a whole bunch of inhabited locations, but not so many that it's crazy. I'd say that's a reasonably decent spread. So in this sense, each one of these green dots is an independent world. So they are FTL capable, but they don't have any ongoing relationships with any of their neighbours. So they're purely just independent societies. They may know about each other, but they're not, actively in any kind of alliance or anything. They could have trade agreements. We can certainly build that into the code, but that's about it. We'll have it so that most sectors of space will be set up like this. So you'll just be running across, an independent alien species who you can get to know, and then, maybe exchange some data with them and move on to the next one. Okay, so I reckon... Do I leave it at 1? I suppose so. Because we do have the option for no civilization at all, in which case it won't generate any worlds. So we need at least 1 if there is life there. And then our factions. Okay, so if we leave that there, then I think that's a decent enough data spread, at least to be getting on with. Right, so the other thing I did is I have improved upon the overview of each long-range target. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see that it's now a written description of that system. If it's within survey range, which is 2,000 light years, I might tweak that, make that a bit lower, but it will tell you how many planets there are, which is the same data as you see on here. So there are, of course, I need to -1 from that value because it's including the star. So there are 5 planets, all of which are unknown, and that's what this refers to here. If it's out of survey range, it'll give you an estimate of how many planets it thinks there are based on gravitational anomaly. So the way that the sensors work, or at least the way that the long-range sensors work, is they look at the gravitational bending of space-time around a star system, and because stars are big bright objects, you can work out how much mass is within that star, but then you're left with an anomaly. So if space-time is bending X amount, and you know that the star has Z amount of mass, then you have Y amount of unaccounted mass to create the amount of space-time bending that you're seeing around that star system. So it's that unknown quantity of mass, or rather that leftover mass, that it divides by the average mass for a planetary body to derive there are probably 5 planets here, there are probably 4 planets here, based on how much mass is left over. And then you can see on this one, it just does a more meaningful description. Although annoyingly, this particular font doesn't have percentage signs, and I have no idea why. I might make this, rather than using a numerical percentage, use words instead, like highly or very xenophobic or something like that. That should be consistent, yeah. So every system controlled by this same species has the same output there, which is good to see. Yes, stuff, definitely. So when we generate the faction data, so say on this one, for example, so this faction is here, we've got all their data. When we start going deeper into this system, we'll have flags for things like current or historic for that species. So what this actually could be in this particular instance is this is a completely dead culture, and all of these green worlds you're seeing on the map there, those are all worlds that have archaeological evidence of that species. So you could spend your time doing archaeological research to try and work out who these people were and what their civilization was. Because if they're a dead species, obviously you've got no one you can hail and speak to, you've got no one you can share star maps with. So in that instance, you're going to have to do the legwork to uncover the details of that species. So we'll probably have fragments of star maps on various archaeological sites on these worlds, which means you'll have to do the legwork, going between all these planets, and at some point you'll work out which one was their homeworld, and then you've got a center point to work around. But I really loved archaeology in World of Warcraft. I loved the idea of just digging stuff up and learning more about the various races in the game. So yeah, archaeology is definitely going to be a big thing in this game. Right, so let's fix that number there being wrong. Right, that should solve that. So pretty much the last thing I got to do with the sensors here is build all these descriptions out. I think it was that one that said 6 before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That one says 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, there we go. So that's that fixed. So again, when it comes to the actual finished system, you won't see like the name of the species and the description until you have uncovered that data. So it will just show up as a G-class star, or an F-class in this instance. It'll be an F-class star. It will read the same as this one, no interesting data, except when you do the survey. So again, you can see nothing here.
Initiating long-range survey.
Shut up, Ava. I picked one with loads of planets, typically.
Long-range survey complete.
So you can see now we've got a text signal on this particular one. I think I'll make that rectangular again because it's a bit large for that. But yeah, so you can see there's a text signature now on this world. So this is the first clue that there's someone here. There's something interesting to see around this system. So obviously you would, set a course for this planet to see what's going on. I need to sort that out. So again, that shouldn't say Earth analog at this point because you haven't figured out yet that it's an Earth analog until you've done a short range scan. Sorry, a medium range scan. Yeah, so some of this needs tweaking. But the idea is an incremental process of discovery. So from a long-range scan, all you should know about this system is that there is a text signal there. And that should be the breadcrumb trail you need to go and investigate this system further. In fact, let's do that. As if by magic, we are now there. And then on the medium range scan, obviously right now, because we've done the long range, we've got level 1 data across the board. If we now do a medium range, this will unlock more data about this system. So now we've got level 2 knowledge of all of these planets. You can see that it gives us our actual type. So this is the equivalent of a honk in Elite Dangerous. So you go into the system, you do your honk, and that tells you about all the different planet types and what they are. Obviously, we now know that this is an Earth analog, and therefore it's very interesting to us. But we then won't know anything about the alien species yet, still at this point. For that, we need to do our short range scan. For that, we can look out the window because there it is. So we would do the scan of the planet, like so. We now have level 3 knowledge of this world, and that will unlock all of the data here, which I'm going to add in a minute. And unlocking that level 3 knowledge will tell you all about the planetary surface and the details of who lives there. Now, that's how it's going to be for the demo. But obviously, long term, a lot of that information is going to come through actually speaking to the aliens or sending down probes, retrieving samples, analysing those samples, and unlocking more and more information about their culture from analysing artifacts in the science labs. So we want all the details to be unlocked via multiple sources rather than just doing a single scan of the planet. But yeah, for now, for the demo at least, a short-range scan of the planet will reveal everything. Very true, Ian. Yeah. While you're sat here doing scans, you might already have annoyed them. They could be sending their ships your way, depending on their temperament, of course. And then, of course, we can do surface view and look at all their tech signatures. Not that there are any yet. So the other thing I need to do for the demo update is I need to make sure that these particular worlds are generating with surface lights and such, and they'll all show up as tech signatures on here as they do with Earth currently. But yeah, this is a very heavily glaciated world. I think we looked at this one last time actually. But yeah, it's crazy cold. I will I'll have a look at this and look at the temperature ranges that we're looking at for these, because we don't actually have the temperature on here yet. So let's get that up there and then we can debug why this Earth-like is so cold. It is perhaps a slightly confusing system, but the tutorial will hopefully explain why everything is the way it is. Hey Jim. Yes, Eric, you're correct. So the idea with planetary surfaces is, yes, absolutely, we want to be able to land on planets, although not with this ship. So you'll take a shuttle down. The main ships are essentially mobile bases. They're huge things that aren't designed to land on planetary surfaces. For one, there's a giant ring around it, so there's nowhere for landing legs to even go. But it will be equipped with shuttles, and you will use those to fly down to surfaces where you can explore on foot. Yes, Jack, we're aiming for a Christmas demo update. We were aiming for the 24th to release on Christmas Eve, but I've been ill all this week with a kidney stone, so that's pushed things back a little bit. We're still aiming for Christmas though. Essentially, like every day now, between now and when it's released, I'm just polishing and fixing and just getting all this stuff up to the state it needs to be at for the demo release. There are a couple of really hard lines in the sand, like the updated tutorial for the new sensors has to be finished before the demo can go live. It absolutely has to be. We can't not have that done. All of the major bugs need to be fixed, and by major I mean the real game-breaking ones. And generally speaking, everything needs to be at least to the point where it was in the current demo. Obviously, we've pulled the entire ship apart and rejigged it since the last demo update, so we don't want things to be worse off now than they were during the last update, because we don't want it to appear like there's a backward step at any point. Yes, it did hurt. I was I was pretty much bedbound yesterday. I thought it had gone away, but apparently not. It's still hanging about. We will eventually model that, Paul, by way of a cutscene, I expect. So if you try and take the main vessel into a planetary atmosphere, the first thing that's going to happen is the autopilot is going to take over and steer you away and just flash loads of warnings, like, warning, atmospheric penetration, and something like that. If you persist with it and force the ship down into the atmosphere, then we'll probably have a cutscene where you see the ship, burning up and falling down towards the world. The reason we cannot land the ship is because of game engine reasons. It's not by choice. It's because the ship interior is a static environment and doesn't actually move. So we're moving space around the ship. So when you're flying towards a planet, the planet's actually flying towards you. So space is the thing that is moving, to coin a quote. So because of that, we cannot render planetary surfaces from the perspective of the main ship interior, because the planetary surface, obviously with rocks and plants and flowers and trees and rivers, there's a lot of stuff there, and you can't move that through the game world. It would just completely collapse on its face if you tried to do that. So yeah, the main ship cannot interact with the planetary surface in that way. Yes, Charlie. So this particular ship is built around lunar orbit. Our first major shipyard is going to be around the moon, and the resources used in the ship's construction are mined from the moon. Obviously, it's much easier to get things into lunar orbit than it is to Earth orbit. So in the game's lore, heavy industry has been moved to the moon, and all the ship construction and any space-based construction is happening around lunar orbit, and we'll build out those shipyards over time. And yeah, absolutely, this ship is not designed to land. It is a mobile space station in some ways. Yeah, to be honest, I don't actually know whether the Enterprise D was supposed to be able to land or not. I mean, did it have landing gear? I actually can't remember. I know it did crash, but perhaps the saucer section was supposed to be able to land. Right, where are we? Yeah, Voyager and its stupid little legs. Something which I've been labouring over in my brain is whether or not to add the orbital characteristics just on a passive scan, because it's already drawing the orbits on the holo display. So the system obviously knows what the orbits are. So we should really be putting that in here. So if we give the planets a very brief summary, like suspected gas giant, suspected terrestrial planet, we can certainly do that. And then on the star, see, a lot of the stellar knowledge you can see from a great distance away, because again, stars are very big and very known objects, and you can derive a lot of the data simply from its spectrum. And speaking of spectrum, I need to replace the orbital characteristics box with spectrum instead for the star. Right, so we need to start working on that one and that one. Okay. Oh, thank you, Rick Madeira, for your Ko-fi shop. Again, I don't know whether or not the Ko-fi bot is referring to people that are watching the stream, or whether it's just randomly regurgitating things that are happening on Ko-fi. Still don't know where it came from. Ah, Rick, you are on the stream. Hello, and thank you. Claire will be in touch. There's me giving Claire things to do again. Right, getting sidetracked again. Where are we? Right, so we don't want that one. We want... that one. Yeah, that one. Oh, that makes sense, Rick. Thank you. Because I certainly can't remember adding anything to do with Ko-fi to YouTube, so it surprises me every time it comes up. But if it's something on your side with Ko-fi, that would make sense. How I started, Jim. Do you remember the input magazines on the Commodore 64? At the age of 5 years old, I would sit there on the living room floor with my mum, and we'd have the Commodore 64 in front of us, and we'd go through the input magazines and copying out code line for line. That was my very first introduction to coding, back in the 80s. Yeah, I never had a C16 or a VIC-20 or anything like that. I went straight in with a Commodore 64. Oh, autosave, why do you do this to me? Right, did I remember to copy in all the light spectrums? Oh, I've clicked the output log. Phew. It's a bit of a minefield, that output log. It either populates immediately or it hangs the PC. Oh, I did. Good. So I need to add all of these spectrums to an array with soft references. I suppose I'm probably better off making this a map. I very rarely work with maps, which means I can never remember how to work with maps. Right, so I think we need... Right, where's the O class? Right, so we've got O. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got the full 10 there. Okay, so right, we'll add all of them then. So O0 V 1V 2V. Ah, thank you, Marcus. We're working on the sensor readouts tonight, Mr. Creeper. Just polishing and finishing off, really, for the most part. So, question for the community. Do we think that the spectral analysis of the star needs to be a level 1 knowledge unlock or part of the passive scan? Yes, we can do this from Earth very easily. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, I'm inclined to say passive because the fact that we even have this to begin with is because it's just part of the light spectrum. Okay, so one thing we need to do then is, because I've just created a separate page, as it were, on the widget switcher. So I need to make sure that is catered for in the code. Yeah, there's no practical benefit to having this on here. This is just one of those nice to have things. So it's there for a point of scientific interest. And I need to add like where the hydrogen lines are and such. In fact, I might put some little buttons underneath so you can like highlight the hydrogen lines to see actually where they are in the spectrum, which could be interesting. But for now, I'll just put the image there. I need to replace these anyway. These are just some images I found online. But just as a test, I wanted to see what they looked like. Yeah. Classic system, this one. Yeah, exactly, Ishta. This is all just immersion and flavor and just, you know, adding stuff for the extra fluff. You know, when we rock up to a star system and start analyzing it, I want like all the data to be there that you would expect to be there if you were an actual scientist looking into this stuff. Yeah, me too. All the fluff. find the widget switcher, that one there. Right, let's get some references to that. Right, so that there, that needs to be 1 or 2 depending on whether it's a star or a planet, which means we need a reference to our planet. So we want long. Where is the thing we need? I think that one. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to do object type on that one, which means it's going to have to be a giant list, annoyingly. It's the fun with working with big enums. Although this does give us the freedom to have multiple pages of information depending on the class of object. So like with black holes, for example, we can have a different readout here for black holes than we do with stars or planets. Or indeed, between like a terrestrial planet and a gas giant, we can have different information displayed, which ultimately is better in the long run. Right, so is that the target list? No, that's the target list. Yeah, so we got 0, 1, 2 for the star, 3 for the planet. My bad, that's not needed on there, it's needed down here. Which means that needs to get out of the way a bit. Oh right, yeah, it's this one. Right, so 0, 1 is the summary, 2 is the star, 3 is the planet. Okay. I'll leave black holes as 2 for now, but we'll give them their own one. I think I need a separate enum actually stored on here. Obviously we're storing the object type. We need like a basic object type, so we're not having to select on these huge lists. Let's just make sure that works a sec. Yeah, they can be SAMD. So what I'll do is I'll have just a plain spectral image and without any lines on it. And then we'll actually place the lines on the spectrum where they should be, and that will allow us to toggle various lines for various chemicals on and off. It means we can also have a much more varied array of different chemicals that we can test for on the spectrum. Right, so there's the summary. Yeah, there we go. So planets read that data, and stars have the spectral analysis. Okay, so we need to do, so we don't want the knowledge level thing there. But we do there. To be honest, there's very little about the star that's worth unlocking, because practically everything about a star you can see from Earth. The mass, the radius, the spectrum, the density, all of that stuff, right down to its metallicity, is all visible in its light spectrum. So, all of this stuff doesn't need to be unlockable. So if we duplicate that, and then we'll switch on that as well, just for good measure. I need to make a separate one for black holes. Pleased to hear it, Mr. Flashpoint. Yes, we are going for maximum fluff. Not yet, Jack, for the simple reason that it's not been done yet. So once we actually have a shuttle bay and a cargo lift and a clear route to engineering from there, then we'll start the tutorial in the shuttle bay without gravity. Once we have gravity enabled as part of the game, so we want to make it so in a true cold and dark scenario, even the gravity gen will be off. So you kind of have to float your way through to the point where you've enabled power, and then there'll be like a countdown and emergency klaxon, a bit like Alien Remus, if you've seen it, Alien Romulus even, where there's that alarm before the gravity gen comes on, so that anyone who happens to be floating above the shuttle bay can sort of bring themselves down. But yeah, we definitely want gravity turning on as part of the tutorial. That's not how you spell photosphere. Greetings to our new joiners. That would be cool, Aaron. Right, so we want the overview. Which I guess is going to be a repeat of some of the detail information that you get down here. And we've got our spectral analysis, the actual physical characteristics, and the photosphere details. Although I'm wondering whether we switch these two around, maybe? Should we put the photosphere first? It's kind of more pertinent, isn't it, than that stuff? See, I was debating whether we even need an overview. But I suppose, just as a bit of verbiage, it's probably a good idea to include one. I'd like to say yes, Jack, because one of the things obviously we need to do for the game is to have a variable gravity direction. So once we have the ability to have circularized gravity and have the character pawn work with that properly, so you can walk around like the inside of a barrel, then yes, we could have spinning ships in that regard. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Francie. We've had discussions before about some of the more technical information that comes up on the sensor output and whether or not we have a simple and advanced mode. So the simple mode just gives you the overview of everything, and whereas if you go to advanced mode, it actually gives you like the proper metallicity values of the stars and the stuff which scientists are interested in. We can certainly put that on there, AJ. So in actual fact, we don't need any of that stuff or any of that stuff. Stop moving it. What was that doing? Oh yeah, we don't need that. It's kind of redundant now. Hang on a minute, what's going on here? So we don't need those. Probably don't need this either, to be perfectly honest. So let's do it from here. What's it? Class star class main sequence star, because they're all main sequence stars right now. Actually, no, they're not, because the LTY classes are not main sequence. So we'll maybe do that separately. So a G2V or whatever class, and then we want guess we'll do a select on that one. Leave those for now because we don't actually have them yet. So either a main sequence or a brown dwarf star. With average temperature of we want more than text fields. So we need all of that really. Kind of making spaghetti needlessly there really, because I can just stick that in here. So like object type. So what's that one? So that's that's object type. So I can replace that with that. Let's get rid of all of that. Get rid of that and that. Start making this a bit more simple. Right, star class is that one. Temperature, right, so that's under atmosphere. So whatever class main sequence star with an average temperature of whatever. This star is approximately age years old. And has that many orbiting bodies. Something like that. Sensors tonight, Zenevant. Just filling in all the data gaps mostly. Hopefully, Anasi, it's all down to timings. If I've got time for it, then yes, I would definitely like to put the cutaway diagram on there. We have all the data for it. I literally just need to make the 3D mesh. Ultimately, it's just a series of spheres, so it's not even a difficult thing to model. It's just time. Right, so if it's over 1, then that would be age billion years. That would be that. I want to just do a single decimal place on that. Otherwise, it's that times a million. No, a billion. Yeah, so again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then that one would be no decimal places, but with grouping. And that would be million years. So the age is stored in decimal billions, so give. So if it's over 1, or actually that should be greater than or equal to 1. Yeah, so if it's greater than or equal to 1, then we're just counting how many billions of years it is. If it's less than 1, then we need to times that by a billion to give us our million years. So it's going to be 999 million years or less. So that should give us an age value. And then we need another output on here if you want. Selected sector location. I think that should be enough data. Does that give us the array? No. Okay, so we want sector location details. Right, that gives us our satellite objects. And we just need a length from that array. -1, because the star is included in the array. Yeah, no, actually, just straight in there. see how that looks a sec. Yes, Anasi, the cutaway will be for everything. So any celestial object will have a cutaway diagram. Yeah, definitely ODST. I mean, we're doing a little graphic for the long range scan where it's kind of flitting between the different targets. I think some kind of like raising graphic as it's revealing the surface texture would be really good. Or have it go across in stripes like it does when they're like real satellites do it. Yeah. Star Sim sponsored by Slipknot. So that's that one. That's not what it should say. Why is it not saying what it should say? Oh, I know why. Because we're not giving it the right variable. I need to start appending star onto those so that we're getting the right box populated. Right, and yeah, then we also need to do a select for yeah, for the spectrum. So spectral analysis, that needs an execute pin. All that and them, and we don't need an output. But what we do want is you want to take a copy of that and set brush from texture, I believe. Right, then we need to find our class and then load asset. Do so async load asset balls cast to texture 2. No, just texture should do it, hopefully. No, what's that? Texture 2D. Right, fine. Cast to texture 2D. Copy that again. Convert that to a string. Right, so as long as the details in this map, i.e. them, match the classes that are showed here, i.e. them, as long as they match, it should find the right texture, async load that texture, and set that as our brush for the UI. Oh, sorry. No, I'll admit defeat on that one. I always thought that was a Slipknot song. It is very Slipknot, to be fair. If Corey Taylor was dead, he'd be turning in his grave. I agree. Welcome to the not so glamorous side of game dev. The side of game dev when you're just filling in boxes of data. Oops. Hang on, I made a boo-boo. Make sure that these are correct. A3V. A4V. A5V. A6V. Okay. Do I have to do this for every single stellar class? Why, yes, I do. It's alright, there's only 70 of them. Yeah, it's one of those things where you got to do the grunt work sometimes. Let's just try that, see if it actually worked. Okay. There's an F class. And there's a G class. Definitely different spectrums. So you've got a lot of sort of ultraviolet activity there. And not so much there. So yeah, it's definitely working. Oh, I need an an rather than the a on front of that one. So that's going to require an annoying amount of manual labour. Why is that going across there? They are just images, but there are 80 unique images. So the spectrums are actually accurate for those classes of star. Because fortunately with stellar spectrums, certainly in the main sequence, they're fairly consistent. So like this one's an F0V class, and you'll find that pretty much all F0Vs will have the same spectrum, give or take. Ran out of tea, so I'm onto the water now. But they will be dynamic eventually, because I want some buttons along here where you can tick and untick like hydrogen lines and such. So it will actually dynamically build the spectrum based on what you actually want to see. Right, so this suppose we need to size specifically so that we're not going outside of the box. Also need to change the font. I think that's the font I used for the overview. Yeah, size 10. And then we want some auto wrapping on that. Here we go. Right, let's just give that another quick test. Okay, so that needs a bigger box. It should. You are quite correct. Except for the fact that I think if I... Yeah, in order for this box to automatically fit the text, the text would have to be a child of the object, and I can't make the text a child of this object because it's an external widget. I might be able, however, hang on, if I, yeah, because it is set to size to content, but if I expand that, what on earth? What happened there? It all went a bit haywire then. Yeah, because it's not expanding that to match, and I think that's because it has a pre-specified box size, and again I cannot make that a child of that object, which is altogether a pain. I wonder if because I could use these. Now this would break every UI that uses this, but just as a test, is that going to work? No. Mainly because we're specifying the size in code. So I'd probably need a flag where we prevent that from happening. Color. Ah, there. Yeah, so if I skipped sizing it, okay, that makes it ooch. I don't even know actually which box it's even aligning to there. So we don't want it to size to content because it has no content. We want it to scale to the size of its container, which in this case is that box there. are you changing that? Yeah, I mean, ideally, everything would be dynamic. Not sure why it's forcing that. That's very weird. Am I setting that in here somewhere? Bet I am. Oh yeah, there. Yeah, so ultimately this is the whole widget system in Unreal, being typically its awkward self. That's interesting though. It's ignoring that when we're not sizing it to content. I think that's going to have to be a problem for another day. At least that bit works. Stick another class in there. O, B, A, F, G, K. K, 0, V. Okay, last class. I'll use M9V for all of the LTMYs because they have a very similar spectrum. Oops. That's all the main sequence stars done. Planets will have atmospheric chemicals instead. We won't do a spectral analysis for that. Earth is tech level 20. Keep seeing a rogue image appearing. The other cool thing with this spectrum, by the way, I don't know whether you can see, but if you look in the middle of the spectrum where the green and the yellow are, as I move up and down, you can see that there's a bright patch which is moving left and right. That's actually the actual bright spot in the spectrum, and you'll notice that on the G5V it's in the green area because our star is technically brightest in the green spectrum, which is why people say we have a green star, which is very cool. But hopefully I haven't missed any out there. Just need to check that what the LT and Ys are listed as. Really? All 9 on each one? Sigh. Do that in a minute. I suppose I better capitalize this, really. Ideally, I'd like to display some of these bits in bold, but the UI doesn't really allow for that. It's a nice room temperature star. debating the need for the word class there, to be honest. It kind of breaks the sentence a little bit. Have a good one, Jim. Thanks for watching, as always. That's a crazy enum. Let's go intro. There's probably a more sophisticated way of doing this, but it works for now. I imagine this is going to be all kinds of fun when it comes to localization. Yeah, you're right, Ishtar. A lot of the time, it's by the time you explain something to someone, you could have done it already. And I have this problem with a few things. It actually takes longer to explain what to do than to actually just do it. Whoops, put the years in there twice. Probably squeeze that into there. Yeah, when it comes to distance, we'll definitely do that. So I'm doing something similar with the main overview. Here. So basically we're checking if it's over 2,000 light years away, which is beyond our survey range. It just kind of makes note of that there. It's not doing the actual calculation yet, but that's where it will go. So what we'll do is we'll use that sort of gravitational mass anomaly to work out how many planets there should be, and we'll put that in the description when that's implemented. Hey Retia Callum, today we are fleshing out the sensor data, specifically the star. Just making sure that all of this gubbins here is properly calculated and properly filled in. So photosphere is next. So we need that text box, which is that one. In fact, let's do it in here. So we don't need any of that. But we do need that. Don't need that. That should say star on the end of it, just so we know which one we're dealing with. Don't need an output pin, that can go away. And then we will set the text like so. So what do we want? We want all of that. That should be everything. I know I actually am calculating some other stuff. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of data points that's missing there. Let me just make sure these work a minute. Okay, clearly that needs some decimals. Might need to multiply these by 100 to get the actual proper percentage. Actually, while I'm at it, yeah, that was the other data point. Is the ratio between metals and hydrogen. I was doing a calculation for that, and I cannot remember now what I was doing. Let's dig into that. So that's one of the sciencey things that that is used to determine the metallicity of a star versus the sun. So that's as far as so Sol would be 0. So 0.14 is above Sol's metallicity. So this has more metal than Sol, if memory serves. course, there wouldn't be any methane in that, would there? Because that's the star. Did I include that on that one? No. So that can go away. Don't need that. Right, so that multiplied by 100 is the hydrogen, and the helium, and the metals. Let's just have a look at the medium range real quick, because I'm obviously doing something slightly different there. Oh, that was it. Let's steal that a minute. Right, so metals is that. Right, and then that one is that, which I believe is the same source value. Yep. Right, that's more like it. So we don't need the surface data box, that can get deleted. So it's just that. So we've got our overview, our spectral analysis, the photosphere data, and then just some physical characteristics, and that should be it for the star, really. I suppose we could also just mention the fact that it's a like second generation star. Population 1. Yeah, pretty much any of these are going to be population 1 stars. Yeah, fusion rate, lifetime, that kind of like expected lifetime, that sort of thing. That's really more pertinent for like an O class, because obviously they only hang around for a few million years before going pop. There was something else I wanted to add to that. Right, yeah, I wanted to move this down slightly. And get rid of that one entirely. That simplified it all somewhat. Shouldn't need any of that. Makes things a bit simpler. We'll borrow our age calculator. So, of course, I need to do these as a percentage of sol, which I might very well have done actually on here. don't need that. So body mass divided by the mass of our sun. Shouldn't need any of these. Oh yeah, I'll do another test in a sec on Inoni. Have a good one, Canadian dude. And also CSI, and I hope you feel better from your little hospital trip. If you mean on here, yeah, good point. It's a decent fit. I think I'll probably do 2 versions of the text output. So I'll make one of these darker than the other, so they're not kind of blending into each other quite so much, because that is a bit, I don't know, just hard to read. Yeah, the rest of those should be mostly copy paste. Right, I'll finish off doing the physical characteristics of the star, and then I shall call it a night for tonight. Let's increase the letter spacing on these a bit. That should help with the readability. when I get to the medium sensors again, I will do them the same way. I'll remove the stellar data from that, keep them separate. It's just much cleaner to handle the stars and the planets separately. Let's move those apart a little bit. Radius next. So don't care about those. That one is divided by that one, which means we no longer need that. Don't need them. Okay, next. Volume. Okay, gravity. Okay, last one. Other way around, Jack. The actual physical panel will be resized to match the display. The display is a set size, so I've gone for consistent scaling of all the UIs in the game, so that they have the same pixel density on the screen, and then we'll just size the physical structure behind it to match. Otherwise you end up with different UIs at different resolutions, and then you end up with inconsistent size scaling on things. Okay. I think that will just about do us for that. It's a lot of spaghetti, but hopefully it's reasonably well organized spaghetti. Let's give it a quick try a minute. Oops, wrong button. I definitely think we need some columns on here. I think I might actually change this to a horizontal box rather than just like bleh. And then we'll have tabulated lines. So obviously we'll have all the headings on a line, then we'll have a tab space, then all the values, another tab space, and then all the comparisons to Sol. I'll add just a little bit more space down the bottom there on that one. It's a bit close to the bottom. Hey, Scorpio. Oh, that was interesting. Why did it just... Ooh. Okay, so it's not updating spectral class until you click on it. Okay. Which is weird because we are generating it. Weird. So it's keeping the last one by the looks of things. Yeah, let's go back to that one again. So that's very much in the UV. And then that M class is still using the other one. Yeah, okay. I think that did change a little bit. What's going on there? Well, funnily enough, it actually is for selecting the star. Wondering whether it needs a bit of a delay so that it doesn't select it until after a second or so. I bet it's something to do with an async load here. That's exactly what it is, in fact. Because we're async loading the texture, that means that... Right, let's do that instead. So of course we were setting the brush texture like before it had finished loading. Okay, yeah, that is correct, which means that should also be correct. Yay! Yeah, it was that. It was the async load that was the problem. That's better. Okay, it's got that one, that one. Haven't done the brown dwarves yet. F class there. Yeah, so I'll fix the display here so they're not all like just gobbledygook. That'll make it much easier to read that. And that's pretty much it. I don't think we really need anything else for the star. I suppose the only thing we need to add is once we have a multi-star system, we'll have a barycenter and we'll actually have some orbital characteristics at that point. Once we have them, I will add them. But for now, I think that's practically everything we need. Yeah, I like easy to fix bugs. Okay, so we shall leave it there for tonight. It's been 3.5 hours, so that sounds about right. I could do with a stretch and a refill of my drink. Right, let's find the big me. There we go. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for joining the stream. Oh, it's nice to see the usual crowd turning up and a few new faces as well, which is always good. I shall see you all again on Wednesday, and I shall go ahead and pop this one out as a new build because nothing is broken, so I'll go ahead and do that now. So have a good week, everyone, and I shall see you on Wednesday. Bye for now.